We're back, Alphas.
We're coming in hot with inspiring guests, witty banter, and colorful commentary for today's veterans and military community. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Welcome, Alphas. Today's guest has mountain climbed in Tanzania. Is that where Tasmania is? No. Scubaed in Korea, trekked in Guam, horsebacked in New Mexico, skied in Utah, fished in Alaska, snorkeled in Micronesia, kayaked in the Indian Ocean, biked in Greece, hiked in Newfoundland, and skydived and whitewater rafted in Colorado. This apparently lazy person is none other than Air Force veteran Brandon Fertig. In addition to his outdoor adventures, Brandon served 20 combat-centric years in the Air Force. During his first enlistment, Brandon retrained into an aircrew job as a loadmaster on the mighty C-130 Hercules, where he flew 3,000 flight hours over 55 countries. There's only 7 countries. Oh, that's continents, whatever. And 5 continents. Oh, man, see, I should have read ahead. Now the joke's dumber. Imagine that. Me making a dumb joke.
Joe, so.
That is. His 299 aerial combat mission. He's one off? Really? Really, bro? What? He couldn't do one more? Lazy. That's what that is. His 299 aerial combat missions included air support for combat troops. Maybe he ran out of enemies.
We definitely ran out of enemies in Iraq.
His 299 aerial combat missions included air support for combat troops on the ground, aeromedical evac flights for the wounded, and sobering and solemn mission of repatriating the fallen. After 20 years of service, Brandon has joined the civilian workforce, where he's the senior manager of workforce innovation, zeroing in on project management, innovation, and the developing workforce. He also finds time to volunteer, because of course he does, and fundraise with several veterans organizations. And of course, he spends time with his wife and kids. I like how that's last, because we both know that sometimes that's just... It is how it is, you know?
Yeah, but it's the last but not certainly least.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's definitely certainly not least. It feels like that some months.
I think of these sort of bios as a pyramid. You just, the very last is the tippy top most important.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like a MLM at times.
Or the last is the base and it's the foundation of everything.
Ooh,
it's an inverted pyramid.
Either way, it works.
So do you guys have any fun expeditions while touring the world in the military or even after? You got any crazy stories to share?
Fun expeditions while touring the world.
I as you guys know, I'm totally into horses. And so everywhere I went, I always wanted to, get on a horse's back. And I did manage that pretty much everywhere, even in Iraq. Yeah. One of the fun places, I was doing an military exercise with the Chilean army. It was like a big NATO thing. And one of the Chilean officers brought me out to his family's cattle ranch. And so I helped herd cattle one afternoon. So that was a really fun expedition.
I trained with the Canadian Royal Air Force. But I mean, it wasn't really like an expedition in the military. No, it was pretty much like deployments and then, flying the Apache in different locations, which, let's be honest, like that was the great expedition for me. So I think that in of itself, when I was in Iraq, 2010 timeframe, which actually looks like this guest I might have flown on one of his C-130 missions, either coming in or going out.
He did all of them. So if you were
he did all of them. He was there at the end, it sounds like, as well. But we were drawing down troops, at that time. So we were the last Army aviation brigade in the entire country. So our brigade had all the way to Iran, all the way to Syria, all the way to the north, all the way to the south. So I got to see a lot of the country, and that was really cool. I mean, that was certainly an expedition for sure.
For us, kind of the downside of having done quality over quantity. Fallujah, Iraq, for me, and only that one deployment, was we did a really exciting one to where we got to go to air-conditioned trailers that had toilets in them.
Wow. That's
you think I'm joking? I will never forget this for the rest of my life. You guys are laughing. I swear to you, when you've been using porta potties for 5 months and like holes in the ground, we had a guy literally almost pass out because we had not been in any air conditioning. In fact, there were times we could have been in air conditioning, but you can't go in and then step away. You'll never forget it. Like it'll mess you up.
Almost passed
I
out from
understand
the air
that.
conditioning.
The
Yeah.
acclimation is hard.
Yeah. It's like if you're going to be outside somewhere,
Right.
your last like 10 minutes of driving, you roll your windows down because you don't want to get there and be like, you get out and you step out and you're like, oh, I'm perspiring. That's what I do. But no joke. This sounds funny. I'm not even like playing it down like I had it bad. That was a great day. Like that, I will never forget. I mean, we were cold. And using the bathroom. It was a good day.
Sounds amazing.
It was a good day. You guys are jealous.
Very.
All right. Well, great expeditions, from the horses to the helicopters to the air conditioning. So we got a great show. We'll catch up and we'll dive into some of these adventures with Brandon Fertig. So Alphas, stick around and we'll be back with Brandon right after the break. What's up, Legionnaires and sports fans? This is Adam Marr, American Legion member and Army veteran. I am beyond excited that the American Legion is continuing their tradition of support for the Army-Navy game presented by USAA, the first veteran service organization to sponsor America's game in its 126th year history. That's right, the greatest rivalry in sports just got even more meaningful for veterans like us. We're honored to stand behind the incredible student athletes who are not only competing on the field, but are also committed to protecting the freedoms we hold dear. And through this sponsorship, we're shining a spotlight on our primary mission, Be the One, our fight to end veteran suicide. So mark your calendars, tune in to CBS on December 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern to watch Army take on Navy in this epic, timeless showdown. To learn more about the American Legion's involvement in our mission, visit legion.org/Army-Navy Game. Let's cheer on our teams, support our mission, and show the world what it means to be a Legionnaire. Go Army, beat Navy, hooah!
Today, we are joined by MedTechVets mentor and Air Force, by the way, best branch of service ever, Air Force veteran Brandon Fertig, who recently summited Mount Kilimanjaro. And to do that, he was raising awareness and supporting transitioning service members as they navigate the difficult climb from military service to meaningful careers, which I have a meaningful career and I climbed lots of mountains, certainly not Mount Kilimanjaro. So Brandon, I'm really anxious to hear all about your experiences. Welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk to you, Brandon, but I have to ask Stacy, was the difficult climb, was that on purpose? Did you do that whole thing after the Mount Kilimanjaro thing? Was
The difficult climb?
Yeah.
It was a molehill and it was really high. It was very difficult.
I was just wondering if you pun on accident or if it just happens, like if you just like actively do it. All right. How's it going, Brandon? I'm really, really super glad to have you here today. And I want to ask you, just give you a chance to sort of tell your story in your own words a little bit. Can you give us a little backstory about what brought you into the military and then what took you out?
Oh man, how much time do we have?
We have as much time as you want within 40 minutes.
Yeah, I wondered how much we could explore this. I want to keep it tight, but I think I need to reach an audience. So, one of the things that I really struggle with how I would introduce this story and where I'm at today is I have to get you down to the lowest common denominator in my life. And it was being raised in the projects by a single mom. So you can imagine what that's like. And some of the fears that came with that would be, I'd have neighbors who were beating our doors down because they thought it was their house, growing up in a lot of fear. It was a very fear-oriented lifestyle growing up as a kid, to include having just not a lot of opportunity. The socioeconomic climate that I grew up in it's a typical American story. It's a lot of people's struggles. And what do you do with those struggles? How do you get yourself out of that? So life lent itself a lot of fear as a young man, and I had to overcome a lot of that, and to include one of my classmates on my bus murdered his neighbor, to knowing someone like that, and then to finding out the next day at school that Joey wasn't coming home. And I looked him up recently. He still is in prison in the Pittsburgh area where I grew up.
Wow.
So I talked to a lot of mental health advisors coming out of the military why I felt like I had certain issues. And when I got down to the things I never talked about, those things were some of the things that also contributed to what a veteran goes through in fear. And so those fears sometimes will be perpetuated through your life, but the big story here is I never identified with them. I was going to refuse to live like that. And so when 9/11 came about, and pulling myself through high school, trying to make the best grades I had, didn't have a lot of input, didn't have a lot of leadership in my life. And so when 9/11 hit, I something clicked in me, and it was like, I need to do something. I'd been doing a couple of years of college. I was a computer guy at the onset of my career. And I really
you're
enjoyed,
an obvious nerd.
Yeah, a major nerd. I mean,
Yeah.
far beyond nerd. I love to build electronics. I was building circuits for cars and doing all these little hands-on jobs that were just fun for me.
Yeah.
But what really pushed us in, I think a lot of GWAT veterans, this is the story here. GWAT veterans came in saying we need to do something about the current situation in our lives. And that can be personal, that can be spiritual, it could be the military. And when we went into 9/11, some of us were even blindsided by the Iraq War. I was still in school when we found out, oh, by the way, we're also going to be in Iraq. So when I signed up, my vision was Flight 93 crash just miles from my house in Pennsylvania. And knowing some of my family in Connellsville, Pennsylvania, who were affected by that, it was a very personal thing. 9/11 was very personal for me. So, I read the 9/11 Commission. I got smart on the issues, and I really took the time to start to understand that as a young man. So you can kind of see where that energy is building for me to kind of come out of my shell. Within the first few years of joining the military, I knew computers weren't going to be enough for me. So I started to find out what I could do as an enlisted member without a degree. That I would get one later on. But I met my wife in the process of that, and she really built I think the foundation I needed as a young man who didn't have a lot of continuity in his life, if you will. It came with a father-in-law. It came with a family I never had. It came with opportunity. And so here's this kid from Nowheresville and afraid of his own shadow at times, to someone who's willing now to go sign up and go through SEER training, go through aeronautics training, go through C-130 Loadmaster training, go through airdrop training, go through work with special operations, do things that put me on the front lines. And that was a transition. I wish I had more than the 40 minutes here to really expand on that, because I really think that's so big in the story, and why I'm trying to write a book and to find a publisher that will help me tell that story.
Well, two things on my end. Number one, that fear is so interesting because I always felt like I was weak growing up in a lot of ways because I was always afraid. But looking back, I realized that you can't have bravery without fear. And it never really stopped me from doing what I needed to do. I just sometimes did it afraid. And I realized that as I got older that that's a normal, healthy thing. And it gives you a little bit of adrenaline. It gives you a little bit of if you can function through it, then that's what it takes to grow. And I give you props. Writing and editing, even worse, is one of the hardest things that I've done outside of the military. So anything we can do to help you push that process along, you let us know.
That was another thing.
Thank you so much for sharing, man.
That's true. I think what helped me build that confidence to even want to sit down and do that is that the Air Force was paying for education. So I got a bachelor's and I got a master's, put a package in for OTS, and did all those things. But the year I did that, the package closed in 2017. You can go look this up. For whatever reason, I think God had bigger plans for me. But I thought that's what I wanted at the time, but the door shut on me. So when doors shut, that's another avenue we can discuss. Doors shut all the time. It wasn't like we have this like explosive force of nature in our lives making us who we are today. It was like door closed, now what? Door closed, now what? So for me, the doors kept shutting and I kept going to college. That was literally what helped me to start writing. And so by the time I finished a master's and I'm working on this, I actually had a professor tell me, Brandon, out of all the classmates that you have, you're the best writer I've had. And so that really lifted my spirits to hear someone say that, because you constantly put yourself in a small bucket and you try to kind of see where you could go, but it really takes sometimes someone telling you, no, you're much more than just the sum of your parts. I think the word is gestalt. Gestalt could be is a fun word because it means you're greater than the sum of your parts. A bicycle has a wheel, and has a pedal, has a handlebar, but all those together creates a mode of transportation. So we are that gestalt. We're that assembly of all of our stories that create that effort in us to be something bigger than we are right now.
Outstanding.
Well, I love that, Brandon. Thanks for walking us kind of through your origins, into the military, such a rich and illustrious kind of career, doing some pretty cool things. We were talking just a little bit before the show about, how I may have possibly been one of the passengers on one of your planes in Iraq when our time overlapped there. 20 years career, I kind of want to go to the mindset mountain and valley of kind of despair metaphor. Was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro something that you'd always kind of wanted to do? I think doing a little bit of research about you, understanding that you have like a very adventurous kind of background, some really cool things. So maybe it was you kind of always trucking that way. But there's the metaphor of the mountain, right, and the peak and the pinnacle and the valley, and it's it can be cliche in some ways until you actually go out on the mountain in those austere conditions and you realize just how raw and powerful and vulnerable that you really are. So talk a little bit about some of the stressors that you were overcoming, the literal kind of valley up to the top, and what was that experience like for you? What would you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I think I have to go back to probably the first time I climbed a mountain of sorts. I climbed Pikes Peak, which was 14,000. I met my wife in Colorado Springs, and I was stationed there in Space Command. I was a space cadet as well. I had a little bit of everything. And so when I met my wife in Colorado, she married this very timid young man. And something snapped in me. I don't know if it was inspiration. While I was in service, it was maybe having that partner in crime, right? My wife being the catalyst. I think she laughed. We got pregnant with our first son in 2005, and he was born in 2006. And that was the year I went skydiving in Longmont, Colorado. I climbed Pikes Peak. I was trying to do that Tim McGraw song, went skydiving, Rocky Mountain climbing, 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu. I think for me, I wanted something more, and I think it's a gradual growth. When you see, like, if I tell people my story and they're like, wow, you've done it all. You've traveled the world and you've done this and that, but all of those things were waypoints on a map of my life that I had to overcome each time. I'm not, I think, by nature a Red Bull style adventurist. Some of those people spend years climbing, these huge mountains and doing things on the backs of aircraft flying upside down. Some of these people are built that way. I'm here to tell you that's not me. I think when you look at that and people are like, wow, you're an adventurous guy. I'm like, actually, no, by nature, I'm a very thought-provoking, very cautious, and very, it's cost-benefit analysis for everything for me. I want to know what the cost is. Is it going to benefit me for that? And if it does it hit 3 or 4 things for me? Is it spiritual? Is it growth minded? Is it something overcoming fear? And so, when I first ran up, the mountain there in Colorado, I had a lot of fear. It was 12 miles. It's Bar Trail. It's called Bar Trail out of Manitou Springs. And I went with a group of guys and I said, I've never done this before. And they're like, it's going to test you. Cause I wasn't a very physical person when I was young. And that didn't come till much later. So at the time, it seems like every time I went to go do something, the chaplaincy said, hey, we're going to go put a group together. We're going to go skydiving. I was like, oh, I was sitting in my office in a computer closet in Schriever Air Force Base in Colorado, this nerd, and my heart was racing. And I would sit in that chair and I go, I have to sign up for this. One, it's $25. It hits my mark. It's the chaplaincy wanting people to come out and first 15 people get picked. And so I'm sitting there where my heart's racing and like, my wife's going to think I'm nuts. I need this challenge in my life. I needed something to get me out of my shell. And so that was one of the very first times I did something, any kind of crazy thing like that. And then it became an addiction. It starts to become a positive addiction. We human beings are addictive people. We're going to get addicted to something. So instead of choosing some of the things that my father chose, or some of the things that my mother chose, or some of the people around in my life that I didn't make great decisions, love them to death, but they just weren't making good decisions. To give me an example, I wanted to choose things to inspire. I wanted to choose things that would have a story. I wanted to choose things that would prove to my wife and my sons someday that their father was someone who could rise to a challenge. And so, those were even before I even went to retrain as a loadmaster, which took a year of my life to do all those schools and to do hard schools. But this is someone who came out of school, barely passing high school, barely having grades that were anything to write home about. And then having go through load school and go through 9 months of training to rise to that and ace every single class, being like one of the quickest people to get done with what they called a Form F, which was a task in your mind and an ability to put pen to paper and to balance an aircraft with thousands and thousands of pounds of cargo. You don't have a lot of time to screw around in Iraq when you're putting cargo on a plane. You needed to know how to do that quickly. So everything you did needed to be to excellence. And in aircraft world, you don't get a pass. You have to be at 85% or better on all your testing. So you can see where my mind over time transformed to allow me to have the tool set to then go into a career field that's taxing like that and do it for 15 years and to earn the chief enlisted aviator wings. That's something I'm very proud of. It's a lot of people don't stick around the C-130 community. It's just really hard on your body.
School's different when you see the purpose. I think that's what makes school so hard when we're young. History is incredible. Now that I've been in the military and I've seen things, history is like my favorite subject. It was dreadful when I was growing up.
I was not a student, not by the normal means where I think people just, they're students and you see them. I think my son's like that. He can sit down and do anything. I wish I was like him. He's so inspirational. But I think I gave my son an environment for him to be that way, to have confidence, to do the things that I couldn't do. And I think that's one of the things is we don't give ourselves in this generation. I'm a very old millennial. I'm as old as a millennial as you can be and born in 1980. Our generation was stereotyped super hard, more than any other generation before us. Gen X will claim it. I know some of y'all, millennials will say, well, no, millennials were given a really raw deal. And it was like, you guys aren't going to amount to anything. And a lot of times that micro generation between there, we were trying to figure that out too, trying to turn the stereotypes off, turn the things off that, you're not going to be great learners because you're too involved in electronics, or you're not going to be great at this or that because of this. It just became a lot of noise because now we had media, we had internet, untapped amounts of input to our life. And, as human beings, you talked about education. I think before technology, you might have had a teacher or a parent or a family member or a friend giving you inputs into your life. As humans, our brains are only meant to convene or get together like we are here with 3 people to give you some input, to see who you are. What we have now is a generation that is incredibly confused because there's so many voices that the brain can't even comprehend right outside of societal norms of the past that we grew up with, it's easy to see the contrast to how our kids are being so inundated with everybody's opinions. And I tell them and I resettle them every day. And I said, the only opinion that matters to you is yours. Right now, you need to make a decision on what that is for you. And I think that's to me, growing up, I think that's what I see the biggest change in our generational, path forward, is that we have to learn how to control what's important to those who pour things into us. What is the most important voice? Because we have so many options now. That is the challenge ahead, and education being one of those.
Mm. I want to switch gears, Brandon, for a second, because at the top I mentioned you were a MedTechVets mentor, but for the alphas listening, what is MedTechVets, and what do they do, and what do you do for them?
This is really my favorite thing right now. I love working for Phillips. Anybody working there, I drink in the Air Force, we talked about drinking the blue Kool-Aid. Phillips is blue. So I'm still drinking blue Kool-Aid, but it's at a med tech company that's just amazing with their people and their purpose. What I found through Phillips was the connection to MedTechVets. So MedTech inherently, for those who aren't familiar with that terminology, it's anything that's connected care to a hospital. It's amalgamating technologies and informatics, information systems, servers, IT equipment. A lot of people think in medical you have to be medical. No, we have a lot of clinical people, but one of our biggest factors is technical. And so we have helicopter pilots that are prior Army, prior Air Force, that make up our team. We have a very highly technical career field. MedTech kind of amalgamates the tech with the clinical, with the nursing, with the doctors, with the imaging, radiology. You can imagine all of those things have to go into a data system. All of that kind of originally started with just like Kodak doing medical imaging way back in the day. And then now you have everything is on a server. Everything became digital. And now you have to have a team of very highly technical people. You have to have them be highly clinical. You have to have them have leadership skills. You need to have them be project managers. We have the biggest contingent of project managers. If you're looking for a job as a PM, go into MedTech. I mean, that's how I got my start. So finishing a PMP got me into MedTech. MedTech then transferred me over to working with veterans because that's where my heart was always at. So how that transition happened was I pivoted on, and that's really the big story for me is when I mentor people, it's how do you pivot? How do you get out of the military and pivot yourself onto something that's going to be a great career for you and have longevity? So MedTech then led me to MedTechVets. MedTechVets is made up of a team of people who were, they're associated with AvaMed, some of the biggest people in the industry, Philips, AvaMed, GE, Siemens, all of the big IT companies. We even do work with Deloitte and PwC and a lot of companies that have a VA. Let me stop there for a second. The VA, this is the coolest thing in the world. I'm not only a VA customer, and I love my VA at downtown Little Rock here in we have one of the best VISNs in the country. We're in VISN 16. I do work with VISN 7 down in the south, which it hits a lot of you guys down there in the southern part of the country. But our VISN system really opened my eyes to what MedTech looked like, because VA is literally MedTech. You walk into any VA hospital, you're going to find all of those same people that built their careers on the backs of serving others. And then they find their way to GE. They find their way to AvaMed. They find their way to, I'm sorry if I'm forgetting a lot of people that sponsor us. Just go look us up on MedTechVets. But you'll see the connections were vast. So I found a community. I found my people, right? Like I started the conversation earlier in the meeting. Who do I have a voice with? That's the big thing. Can you talk to what you enjoy? Because a lot of people will pivot into their careers and not really have a lot of passion for it. And then you have nothing to build on. So for me, it was like, okay, MedTechVets hits all the boxes. It's my team. I made really good friends with them. They invited me out to Toronto last year to speak. Didn't know me from Adam, and they trusted me with that ability to get up there and speak and to share the story of who we are. And then to then also be invited back after, I said, hey, this year I want to do more for you. I want to fundraise. And they're like, well, what do you want to do? I said, how about we climb Kilimanjaro together? And I started building a team. And it was just a simple idea of, being in that place, Joe, where I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of anxiety. I know I'm not a natural mountain climber. I had to train hard for that. I'm a big rucker. I love to ruck. So I just started rucking more. I rucked every day for 5 miles, or 5 miles a day for 9 months. The most miles I've ever done in my life. And I'm 45. I mean, that's, with disability, there's things I had to overcome for that. And so MedTechVets is why we go and inspire each other to do incredible things. It's not Phillips, plays a role in that to be my employer. But when you go outside of something where you can't get something back from someone, it is so empowering to be able to say you did something for someone, and I did it out of just sheer enjoyment for doing something for someone else. That is one of the most powerful, empowering things you could do. And that's why nonprofits are so powerful today. They affect the VA. They affect our medical systems. They affect our up and coming veterans that we're going to be needing to take care of in the next 20 years. Somebody paved the way for us. I want to be the guy that paves the way for the next.
No, I think that's pretty great. If veterans want to get involved with MedTechVets, is there a place they need to go, a website?
Yes, I think the best way is LinkedIn. Now, I know a lot of military seem to not really be involved with LinkedIn until it's time to transfer. Transfer out of the service. I notice a lot of people will just kind of have a placeholder. But one of the best things that happened for me was the more effort I put into LinkedIn and career mindsets, the better things got for me. I got off of Facebook or Instagram or whatever I was, binging at the time. I said, I'm going to start binging LinkedIn. I want to start reading articles. I want to start getting better for others so that, it benefits me in the long run, right? Where there's always something in it for me. I think that's important. You don't downplay that, because I feel like a lot of times as service members, we're like, we have to do everything for everybody else. But if you don't take care of you, I can promise you're not going to be where you want to be in 5 years. So you have to do something for you that creates an image for yourself. And what does that image look like? There's no wrong answer to that. Like I just happen to be very veteran oriented. And I think I just happen to be someone who came up from nothing. And I have this desire to elevate myself out of these places in my mind, because I still go to dark places. I still struggle with things. I still am in, a lot of times that mindset will come back. And I think I heard actually on the American Legion podcast, I think one gentleman say, PTSD, for example, isn't something I'm not going to overcome. It's something I'm going to partner with. What do you do with that? Don't identify with the problem, partner with it. And I was just so blown away by that mentality. And I was like, I'm adopting that one. I'm stealing that one. And I think that's how you reach out to one another. It's individually on LinkedIn. I don't think it's a website. I don't think it's just, websites to me are just kind of a dead end. This is why you guys are so powerful. It's the interaction that changes things. And I think LinkedIn has got that interaction. So to answer your question, I think LinkedIn is the best way to reach out to MedTechVets and get involved.
So what you just said really resonates with me, because I think that a lot of times, and I'm not one of those people that's like, let's get rid of the D at the end of PTS. And I'm not one of those people that really thinks of it that way. But as I've sort of matured in my trauma, God, that sounds like such a therapy term, but I realize how useful PTSD is when you're the one that's in control.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem with PTSD is you don't know whether you're in control or not.
Right.
But having said that, when you have safe sort of logical, reasonable ways to mitigate the stressors,
mm-hmm.
like just make sure my doors are locked. I live out in the country. I've got I've got cameras outside of my house. I've got, a mini pig that will protect me with their life. I've got, when somebody comes down my driveway, I've got a bell that goes off in my house. Like I can't solve everything.
Right.
And if Russia throws a helicopter over my house and drops onto my roof, that's not something I can reasonably expect to happen. But because I do these other things and I stay on top of it, and I don't ever just ignore something that's bothering me, I try to find the logic behind it. I found that PTSD is a survival tool when you're in a good place.
Yeah.
And again, it's not something that you need to beat. It's something that you have to learn to. There's an artist named Rin who talks about his mental health, and he says it's a back and forth. It's a dance, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
pendulum, and it goes back and forth. And the farther you swing one way, the greater the shadow beneath it. And so it's one of those things that really sort of made me sort of stop fighting PTSD and finding ways to mitigate and use it, and so I say that because I feel like outside of that stigma and the transitioning and things like that we have to learn how to do, I think that a lot of times we're failing these young people as they're coming in. And it's weird to think this way, because when we came through, we felt like we were adults looking back. And I mean nothing against these young 18-year-old men and women, but you're going to look back and wish you had known some of the things that we're about to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
and that we have already talked about. And one of those things is that these hard things that happen in your life, this desire to push yourself, is going to have consequences for better or for worse. And if you push yourself too far, you're going to burn, and you're going to pay for it in your 50s and your 40s with your joints and stuff like that. And it's not going to get better every year. So I say all this because, what do you think us, not just as the American Legion, but also as veterans, what do you think we can do to help prepare some of these people? We don't have access to a lot of these young people going in, but I think that we can all agree that in a lot of ways we fail them transitioning out. And I'm not diving into the transitioning out of the military thing is a huge can of worms that we could get hung up on. So instead of focusing on what the military is doing wrong, I want to ask you, what do you think us as individuals can do to help these people, to give them resources that they'll actually trust and use, to help them reach a place where we wish somebody had come and talked to us when we got out, that we trusted? How do we reach these people that are getting out and teach them and pull them into the American Legion if that's what it takes?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack, and I think I took everything
Yeah.
in you said, I struggle with a lot of things, and I was hoping not to get too. I think that we got to go down that road sometimes, man. I think what we're doing is we're doing ourselves a disservice when the stigma of how it might affect someone and what we say. I remember someone telling me, just deliver your story. Don't push what worked for you onto others, but give them an example so they might have a toolkit. Every one of us has a story.
Yeah.
So I think, in our company is very careful about that. We're very, very cautious of our wording, because we don't want to send someone into a place where we don't know where that might go. We want to have control of everything. But can I just share that I've lost two friends to suicide, and they were both on the other side. It wasn't during service, it was after. And I sit here and rack my brain about, could I have done anything different? And could I have, what did I know about that person that might have done, if I could have done something different to save them? And a lot of times time doesn't heal all wounds, and space and distance does not heal all wounds. And you can't be there for that person when they're in San Antonio and you're in Guam, for example. Or I lived in Guam for 3 years up until 2022. And so when I hear of someone's passing, it's like, could I have reached out to them? Could I have called more? I remember actually sending this person a challenge coin that had a shark on it. Like, that was my last time I talked to them. And I don't know what's going through their lives. And I used to think, well, it's this or it's that. And can I just tell you, I think that, I don't know if this is the common denominator, but this is my story, is purpose. When I get to a place in my life, and I was just a C-130 guy, I didn't see ground combat. I had a lot of close calls. I've seen crazy things like rockets going over our aircraft. I have combat action medal. And if they were allowed to, I think we would have had more than just one. And you come home with bullet holes in your plane, and you go back to your room and you're like, what am I doing here? Is this challenge worth it? We've had load masters get hit in the head at the scanning window over those contested areas that we've worked in. And you go home and you're like, God, I hope that person doesn't take that moment in their life and make it all about that one moment. And you're like, what do you do? What am I going to do to make sure I'm not going down that road that leads to something like that? I can't speak for others, because I think that's what our we're always trying to fix it, right? The military is always trying to fix it. DoD is trying to fix it. Why do we have such a high rate of suicide? Why, this, why that? And in a corporation, I'm a project manager. We go down the whys of every different hole you can think of for a root cause analysis. And we do it to death and waste time doing it, in my opinion. I think we have to hold each other accountable to what we can and can't control. I think my story is that when I get in a dark place, I try to do something for somebody else. There's a song that I made that I did to this like montage video of Kilimanjaro. It's on my LinkedIn page, and it's not a well-known rock band, but this guy's music it just hit me so hard that when we do something for somebody else, it gets us out of that dark place. When we make it about us, we will fail every time. We can't do it alone. And that's what Kilimanjaro actually came out of. It was January this year. I was in my bed, laying there. It was dark. I couldn't sleep. Emotionally, I think for some reason, we always get the hardest around holidays for some reason. And I just remember feeling so crappy that day. And I just remember thinking, I need another challenge. I need another, boost of what works for me. And
micro purpose.
Yeah, you find your purpose. I looked over to my wife and I said, babe, I'm going to go climb Kilimanjaro. I've been thinking about it for a long time. And she laughed, and I go, no, I'm serious. And she goes, no, Brandon, I know you. I know you're serious, and you're going to make it happen. Like that's the kind of spouse I have. Like we've been married 22 years. She just gets me. And so I told her, I said, here's my why. And then I said, you know what? After that thought developed, I said, how can we use this to change others? How can we use this to affect others? I need this for me. What can we do to raise money? Can we raise money? I called up the Towers nonprofit. I called up Red, White, and Blue. I think they actually had a climb. Red, White, and Blue did. I called up all the big nonprofits, and I just couldn't get any momentum. MedTechVets comes out of the woodwork, and they're like, dude, we will support you up to $250,000 to go raise money. And I was like, this is what I need. And this whole year has been supported by the thought I'm doing something for someone else. And it has been one of the brightest years of my life. Now, I don't care who you are and what capacity you serve, but if you spend a lot of time downrange, and I have 36 months downrange in a 130, it's not like we're strategic. We're not coming out of the theater. So seeing a lot of those different things happen. There was one other time I want to share with you, and I know I'm going long, but I want this to be another reason to fix something for yourself. I was in Iraq, and I was carrying the repatriated remains out of Iraq, flight after flight after flight. And I'm not kidding, hundreds of caskets out of Iraq. And I'm loading them onto a 130. We're saluting them on the way out of Iraq, out of Baghdad and Bayop and Balad. We did those double shuttles. We flew them back to Salim and put them on a C-17. 17 took them up through the system to get them back here to the States. We had a repatriated remains funeral for every one of those people. And I started to come back to my room. I would just be bawling, y'all. I was like, I did not understand what I was getting myself into. And if you're any kind of person that has a heart, that stuff will wear on you. I don't care how strong you are. I would be crying in my room. My roommates, who are also enlisted aviators, would be at the gym or something, and I would just find my place with God. And it got me to a place where I could cope. Something that happened in me was I took one of the names of the people that we manifest them like passengers. They're not cargo. They are human beings. We honored them that way, and we brought them home over and over and over for month after month of this. And it wasn't always that mission. We did, combat, we did airdrops, we did combat cargo moves, we did SEAL team moves. We did really fun stuff too, I think, because get that fun side of the job is what we love to serve each other. But what was wearing on me that deployment was I needed to make a connection to what was happening in my life. I took one name. I looked up that individual. He was going home the next day, y'all. He had died in a roadside bomb. I found him on Facebook. I befriended him and his wife and his mom. He was 22 years old. I reached out to his mom when I got back off that deployment, and she lived in Plant City, Florida. And I went down, I called her and I said, I want to come down there. I want to talk to you. And I needed to make a connection with you. This is maybe even just for me. And she was bawling on the phone. She goes, I never understood I didn't get the story of what happened to him. I said, honestly, it was just as they said. And the next day we had him on a plane home to you. And I can't tell you how I carried that name around for 7 deployments. It happened on my first deployment. And I'm sorry, no, I apologize. That was the second deployment. And the first deployment, it made a connection for me that what I'm doing over here is so much more important than how I feel. There is only healing when I do something for somebody else. And so that was the game changer for me that got me through all those deployments. We got to do something for someone else. That's what leads to our healing.
Well,
It's called
Brandon,
service for a reason.
I want to jump in real quick. Brandon, there's a song called Angel Flight by Radney Foster and Darden Smith that was written about the C-130 aircrew repatriating American fallen. So
Really?
check that song out. It's pretty compelling. I think it's written exactly for you.
Oh, word. Thank you. Yeah, I'll write that down. Angel Flight.
well, Brandon, you can see how, we could probably have this thing go for hours. That's what I love about this show. I mean, it in and of itself is it's a therapy. It's storytelling. It's being able to connect into, yeah, certainly like our time in service, but like, we get the opportunity to learn about your service. And the thing that's really emanating, here at the end is you're talking about how on the other side of service do you bring it back around to service. And I think what I'm also hearing is that there's this search for mission and purpose and community, on the other side. And we talk about all these pathways, whether it's inside Phillips or inside the nonprofit. How do you find yourself? Again, how do you assign yourself that new mission? Yeah, you got to provide for your family, but sometimes that doesn't really fit the bill. When in the most formidable years of our life, we were defending freedom in our country, in our homeland, and our families. And you give that mission to somebody in their 20s, and then you say, all right, now go work and, medical
Go be normal.
tech and be normal and go work in a cubicle, and you're to be there at 9 and check out at 5. And your first boss is going to be a 26-year-old, MBA, and they're going to take you through the warehouse and tell you about leadership in the warehouse. And you have to bite your lip and bite your tongue because you're saying to yourself, I had a different leadership training, but how do I, convey that to you? I think the other thing that I really hear from you is also this suffering that happens. And it certainly happens within the military. There's different variations of it. If you don't like the word suffering, you can say struggles or you can say challenges. But I think suffering is a part of the human experience. And I think societally, we shun away from suffering and go towards, convenience. However, there's a suffering that happens out on the mountain. There's a transformation, that happens. There's a refinement and a purification and going into your next and best form. So I think it's also what we're also talking about is shifting the perspective from suffering as something to avoid as some suffering that is something that happens to us in our journey of life. And it's not the life sentence. It's just an agent that's helping us become that next version of ourselves. And oftentimes, as you were saying, those doors that are closing along the way, those doors can be the thing that completely overcomes you. Or you can realize that door being closed was just so that it could orient you to the map and the route that you were always supposed to follow. I think that's one of the benefits of being a little bit older that I hear in your story is, you're able to look back and make sense of all that, aggregating together.
Right.
So we're so grateful for the path that you're on, the service that you're doing, how you're showing up and leading and serving. And above all, this storytelling that you're out there doing. We need more of you. We need more like you being able to do it. And also, Brandon, you do it quite well. Well, we're going to have your social media handles in the show notes. We're going to ask the Alphas to connect with you and follow the channels. Stay tuned for the updates on your book that's hopefully coming out in the near future. Is there anything before we kind of close here today, Brandon, that you'd want to share with our Alphas that we haven't touched on briefly?
No, it doesn't have to. Well, I think I want to end it on maybe a lighter note because time constraints always kind of leave you in a mid thought. I think there's hope, there's strength, there's growth, there's opportunity. Connect with people like MedTechVets, connect with people like the American Legion. Our Legion president here at 70 Post 74 here in Central Arkansas is now the state president. He's a go-getter. He's someone who leads the way, and find people who will get you. Don't surround yourself with people who just want to hear you and kind of keep you where you are. There's nothing wrong with that. We all need a support system. Surround yourself with people who are positive. Surround yourself with people who are growing. Surround yourself with people who will help give you opportunity. In fact, that's how I got where I'm talking to you today, is because I have incredible people in my circle. Your circle will make or break your career post-military. And I'll tell you what, it's a crap load of fun when you find the right people, and you are my people.
Well said. Well said. All right, Alphas. His name is Brandon Fertig. He's an Air Force veteran, and you should connect with him on LinkedIn. We really appreciate
especially
your time.
if you're a publisher.
Especially if you're a publisher.
I need a publisher.
We really appreciate. We've appreciated the time you've spent with us, Brandon. Thank you. Thank you for your service, brother. All right, Alpha, stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
Hi, I'm Pam Ray, National President of the American Legion Auxiliary. The American Legion Auxiliary is thrilled to be part of the American Legion Family USA 250 Challenge. The challenge is a special way to honor our nation's 250th birthday. Participants can choose 1, 2, or all 3 categories, but the one that means the most to me is community service, because that's our primary focus in the American Legion Auxiliary. We put service first as a way to honor the generations of veterans who came before us to protect our freedoms. There are many ways to achieve the community service goal. A unit could serve 250 meals to homeless veterans, prepare 250 care packages for deployed troops, or create 250 quilts for veterans in VA hospitals. There are so many ways you can participate, but the best way is to do it alongside your Legion family. Visit legion.org/USA250 to get started.
All right, Alphas, we hope you had a suspiciously great break. Now it is time for some scuttlebutt. What you got for us, Miss Stacy Pearsall?
Well, I'm going to actually pass the buck right on to Adam first.
I'll take that torch, because for years, the nature and origins of Gulf War illness, a medical issue affecting as many as 1/3 of the nearly 700,000 U.S. troops who deployed as part of the first Gulf War, were not fully understood. But over time, the demand for treatment and recognition of the problem grew, as it often does. Studies consistently indicate that GWI is strongly linked to chemical exposure during the Gulf War and is associated with multiple objective abnormalities, including structural brain changes, mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation, and immune system changes. It's defined by a profile of symptoms consistently identified across Gulf War veteran populations that include persistent fatigue, cognitive difficulties, chronic pain, respiratory issues, skin problems, and gastrointestinal distress. Now, Gulf War veterans have additional resources to get diagnosed and receive treatment. Recently, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention formally established a specific diagnostic code for Gulf War illness, a move giving long overdue validation for veterans affected by the condition. The CDC designation, which took effect in October 2025, represents a significant step toward enhancing diagnosis, standardizing care, and advancing research for Gulf War syndrome. The Gulf War Illness Diagnostic Code, in case you're wondering, T75.830, Gulf War illness, is included in the International Classification of Diseases, 10th revision, clinical modification. So that's the ICD-10-CM, which is the system used by healthcare providers across the United States to classify diagnoses and recommended procedures. And what that means in common language is, if you don't have a code to go in there, then doctors within the system and standard of care cannot put that in. They cannot treat it. They cannot attach it to any kind of insurer or payer, thereby, making it something that's not treatable. So it's a big deal. In the past, the lack of specific codes have been a barrier for veterans, forcing medical evaluations to document Gulf War syndrome symptoms under broader, less descriptive categories. This created difficulties in tracking the problem and created barriers for veterans seeking benefits and recognition for their service-connected health problems. So to receive a diagnosis under a Gulf War illness code, a veteran must meet several specific requirements. First, the individual must have deployed to the Gulf War theater between August 1st, 1990 and July 31st, 1991. A veteran must experience chronic symptoms lasting for 6 months or longer that began either during or after the deployment. And the veteran must exhibit symptoms in at least 3 of the 6 areas: fatigue and sleep problems, pain, neurological, cognitive, and mood disorders that could be like dizziness, balance issues, depression, or anxiety, gastrointestinal issues like chronic diarrhea, nausea, irritable bowel syndrome, respiratory problems, and dermatologic issues, right? So issues referring to the skin. For symptoms to be considered for the diagnosis, they must be at least moderate severity, or the veteran must experience multiple distinct systems. And look, there's some more, kind of on about this and the diagnostic codes and what's happening here. But this, I just came back from the Burn Pits 360 gala that they had in Texas. It was really cool to kind of hear the story of that organization, really just coming about in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, and what they did through the veterans of the second Gulf War, what they were experiencing from the toxic and chemical exposure and the challenges being faced. A lot of what we just talked about, here specifically for the first Gulf War and the PACT Act. So it doesn't say here that the PACT Act is directly tied to that, but I'm wondering if that helped kind of push forward these designations for the Gulf War syndrome.
I'm so curious about that, because if it was relevant for them all the way back in 1991, why is that? What were they doing different that makes this not relevant for? Why doesn't this apply to anyone from 2003 on? What specifically do they believe was the cause of this Gulf War, the GWI, the Gulf War illness, that doesn't apply to people who served 10 years later, 15 years
So
later?
you're Joe, what you're trying to say is that you thought it was a regional thing. So why
Yeah,
is what
exactly.
was
Yeah,
impacting them then not impacting people 20, 30 years later?
yeah.
I think it was some of the chemicals that were being used at the time were
Okay.
being associated with the link to the Gulf
Oh,
War
yeah.
syndrome.
Okay. So like the bug spray and stuff like that. I had read something about that. I haven't read up on GWI. That's why I don't know the difference between what they were dealing with versus like the PACT
Yeah,
Act
and
and stuff.
I don't know what the burn pit situation was like in the first,
Yeah.
Gulf War. I've learned about it since because of,
It
burn
smelled
pit.
like they didn't burn anything.
They had oil burning. That
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
big part of it as well. I don't know if the pathology has been linked to one particular chemical or what uh, so much it was in a compound of the environment and the chemicals being used at the time. But it's a lot like our generation, where it's sort of erroneous as well. It could be burn pits, but what was it specifically in the burn pits, or was it collective? Was it country based? Yeah.
Yeah.
What the surprising thing to me is, like, listening to all the Burn Pit 360 stories and former VA Secretary Shulkin and some of the Congress members there, and John Stewart was there, kind of talking about it. Everything is reactive, like on the other side of it's almost
Yeah.
like there's, and it has to come through the terrible stories of the challenges faced within the veteran community. And then it's like retroactively, we're going to, try and kind of connect the dots, do the science and, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's just seemingly so backwards, to me
You
that
know how many lives have to be ruined before the government acknowledges something like this?
Too many. One is too many.
One
But
is too many.
yeah. But let's just recognize this as what it is. It's a good news story.
It is good news.
It's acknowledging for those
Yeah.
700,000, and there's pathways here. So one thing I'll say before turn it over to you, Stacy. This diagnostic code may streamline the process for veterans filing disability claims with the VA, right? So that's a big one, to be able to get what you've earned, because of this, to help get the support you need going forward. And the VA has its own regulations for service-connected conditions. A formal diagnosis provides strong medical evidence that can support the veteran's claim, right, for Gulf War illness. And that's pretty much, the all the supporting evidence, that you need to show, what you have. But now that code's there, that process is going to be easier. So since the announcement by the CDC, Stars and Stripes has reported that Ronald Brown, a toxic wounds consultant with Vietnam Veterans of America, has launched a mission to push VA to provide disability payments for coverage of GWI. So
Perfect.
more work to be done, but progress for sure.
Nice. The remains of Medal of Honor recipient U.S. Army Captain Willibald Bianchi have been identified. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced this recently. Bianchi was killed on January 9th, 1945, after U.S. naval aircraft, unaware that there were prisoners on board, scored a direct hit on the Japanese transport ship dubbed Hell Ships by the American POWs. In Naramaro, in Takawa Harbor, an estimated 431 unknowns were killed in the sinking, according to Hegseth. During one of the most harrowing chapters of World War II, Willibald Bianchi demonstrated remarkable bravery, valor, and selflessness. National Medal of Honor Museum President and CEO Chris Cassidy said in a press release, 80 years after he was killed, we are grateful for the work of the Defense POW and MIA Accounting Agency to account for Captain Bianchi and finally bring him home. By the way, we did an episode with them. We're going to put that link back in our show notes if you want to listen to it. It's pretty extraordinary what they're doing, that group. Anyway, at the National Medal of Honor Museum, Bianchi's legacy of service and sacrifice will be preserved and shared for generations to come. Sent to the Philippines in April 41 to serve with the 45th Infantry, the Philippine Scouts, the Minnesota native was among the very first Americans to see combat in World War II. On December 7, 41, the Japanese swept the Philippines, where, retreating into the jungle, Bianchi and his comrades continued their fight against Japanese forces, despite a rapidly dwindling supply of food, medicine, and ammunition. Cornered on the island, Bianchi nonetheless volunteered to lead the attack to wipe out the enemy machine gun nests in Tuol River Pocket on West Bataan on February 3rd, 1942.
Just to clarify, this is 2 months of running.
Sounds like it, yes.
Okay. Holy cow. All right. Sorry.
Yeah, December.
I just wanted to clarify that.
February,
yeah.
December, January, February, yeah.
Wow.
According to Department of Defense, Bianchi was shot twice through the left arm, the left hand, but he refused to stop for aid, tossing his rifle aside and shooting from his pistol instead. As he rushed toward the Japanese machine gun nest, Bianchi silenced it by tossing grenades. The danger was not over. Bianchi was shot twice more in the chest, but the
indefatigable.
Gosh, that's quite a word.
That's a good one.
Soldiers refused to stop. Clambering aboard the U.S. tank, Bianchi took command of an anti-tank aircraft machine gun and blasted the second enemy machine gun position. He was shot in the chest, guys, twice, and he was doing this. He was subsequently shot again and knocked off the tank. It was only then that Bianchi came to arrest. The soldier took just 1 month to recuperate. My God, what a Marine. Before rejoining his men. Oh, wait, was he Army? Was he Army or Marines?
Oh, this is Army, I think.
Was he?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably the only reason they're still doing stuff.
Okay. So anyway, on April 9th,
Army captain, yep.
1942, with no choice but to capitulate, Bianchi, alongside some of the 9,700 Americans and their 66,300 Filipino allies, surrendered to the Japanese. Yikes, that had to be scary.
Yeah.
The already weakened or sick Allied soldiers were forced to trek 60 plus miles with little food or water, enduring what was later termed the Bataan Death March. The Japanese executed anyone who broke formation and couldn't keep up, and casually butchered others, according to historian Peter Duffy. Men were left where they fell, sometimes to be run over by Japanese vehicles. During breaks, most prisoners were forced to sit in the hot sun. The best estimates, Duffy continued, suggested that approximately 500 Americans and 2,500 Filipinos died during the march. Despite these horrific conditions, Bianchi endured with many soldiers, crediting him with moving through the ranks of desperate men, trying to lift their spirits and to get them to walk on. By the way, shot twice in the hand, shot twice in the chest. For the duration of the war, Bianchi survived several harrowing POW camps. At each, according to the Minnesota Medal of Honor website, he took his role as caretaker seriously, bartering with the Japanese for food for his starving soldiers. Many servicemen wrote to Bianchi's mother following the war, telling her that they owed their lives to her son. Gosh, that's moving. Bianchi was transferred from the Bilibid prison in Luzon to the Japanese transport ship Orioku Maru. Am I saying that? Orioku Maru? Maru.
Yeah, Maru.
In December 1944, where it was sunk by American aircraft mere days later. Gosh, that kills me. But how could you know? You wouldn't know, would you? Bianchi survived this. Oh my gosh. Bianchi survived that sinking before being fatally transferred to the Enoro Maru, where he, alongside an estimated 300 POWs, was inadvertently killed.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
This soldier was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor by General Douglas MacArthur in 45 for his conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity. Man, I'm struggling with words today. And be on the call of duty for his actions back in the Philippines. And today, his remains have been identified as part of the DPAA's Enura Maru project, which aims to identify the remains of over 928 POWs killed aboard the ships Iroquois Maru, Enoro Maru, and Brazil Maru. Now Bianchi's name engraved in stone and overlaid it with gold on the walls of the missing at the Manila American Cemetery has a bronze rosette next to it, signifying that at long last, Captain has been found.
With a name, I've never heard anybody with a first name or a last name like that, which means that that name has been retired. The ultimate man has been born, and that's it. No one can ever use that name again, unless you're in his family.
Pretty incredible. Joe, what do you got?
I have got a story about Major Corey Watkins, who didn't expect a trip to the post exchange for a meal to end with one of the rarest treasures in the world of Star Wars trading cards. Ooh. A U.S. Army Reserve behavioral health officer stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, was on his drill weekend at Fort Sill, Oklahoma this month when he stopped by the GameStop inside the exchange. Oh, that old stop. We've all done that one. On a shelf pushed in a corner, he noticed the store's last box of Star Wars cards. Down in the corner was a dented blaster of 2025 Topps Chrome Star Wars. He wrote Sunday in a Facebook post on the Star Wars card collector group. Someone clearly decided to kick it in the corner instead of picking it up. So he bought the box, set it aside after his meal. How do you not just start opening those? Anyway.
Because you're not, when you're not an Uber nerd, food matters.
I'm just a nerd. So, and even I'm tempted. But when he finally opened the pack, the entire exchange heard his reaction. Inside was a 1-of-1 Luke Skywalker card autographed by Mark Hamill, who played the character in 7 Star Wars films.
That's bananas.
Such cards are BANANAS. Such cards are highly coveted by collectors and can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. A 1977 Topps Luke Skywalker trading card held the previous record for the highest sale price of any Star Wars card after it sold for $78,000. That record was broken August 5th. But you talk about Uber nerds.
Oh, no.
Back in the day, though, like now Uber nerds have money. Like they're doing it, dude.
In the back of my mind, when somebody comes into a flush of cash like this, they're like, I'm quitting my job, but this guy can't because he's in the military. But anyway.
Boom.
You put in his 2-week notice. They're like, denied.
I'm going to buy more cards. Maybe it'll happen again.
Yeah, you go ahead. You let me know. Because on August 5th, a 1-of-1 21 Star Wars Galaxy Superfractor card sold for $100,000, according to a Topps Instagram post. So you got to beat that. Topps confirmed the rarity of Watkins' card on its social media accounts, amplifying his story. I bet the person who's like, there's one of these and no one knows where it is. I wonder how many of those have been thrown away by accident, But discovery carries an added resonance. Hamill is the son of a Navy exchange officer and graduated in 1969 from Niles C. Kinnick High School, which moved in 1971 from Yokohama to Yokosuka Naval Base, Japan. As a teenager, he performed in school plays at Kinnick years before returning to visit as a Hollywood star during the Japanese release of the first Star Wars film.
Wow.
We got links for that because we're cool.
Wait,
that's what we do.
There was a card that sold for $78,000. That was in 1997, but he didn't sell his.
This doesn't
he
sound
hasn't
like
sold it yet.
So what is it worth? Is it worth like $1 million, or is it?
I don't know. What do you count
I'm thinking six
inflation?
figures.
Like,
I'm thinking like 150K probably.
It's a one of one from the.
if a Galaxy Superfractor sold in 1921 card sold for 100 grand, a one of one Luke
Well, what is a Galaxy
foil?
Superfractor?
It's got hologram notes on it.
Okay,
Pretty tight.
so that's like a more recent one, but this is like Is this a 19?
His is a 25.
A dented blaster of 2020. What is a dented blaster?
I don't know.
Okay, all right. So we got a good card.
I don't know. I
Worth a
just
lot.
need one.
Good find at the local GameStop.
Always stop by your local on-base GameStop. You never know what you're going to find. That's the moral of this story, boys.
That's right. You never do. You never know what you're going to find. Just like tuning in to the Tango Alpha Lima, you never know what you're going to find, Alphas. So we thank you for listening. And a reminder that we're now hosted on Spotify. If you follow us on Spotify, you can find both the audio and the video versions of the podcast. You can subscribe to our podcast, and you can rate and comment our podcast all in one beautiful place. And that place is called Spotify. You can also find us on Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and YouTube, or wherever all the best podcasts are hosted, because we're one of the best podcasts. Subscribe to our newsletter, send us mail, and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. We'll see you next week.
Laters.